Hi everyone, and welcome to our weekly ATA webinar. Today's webinar is Ol Malo, Live the African Dream. We will virtually travel to Kenya, more specifically to Laikipia. Our host for today's journey is Lucinda Morris from Far Horizons Marketing, who has represented Ol Malo for over 10 years now, having visited the lodges many times. She is now part of the family. Just a bit of information before we get started. The presentation will last around 20 minutes. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. During the webinar, if you do have any questions, please type them in the Q&A box rather than the chat box, which is at the bottom of your screen. This will allow us to run the webinar smoothly. That said, we are now ready, so I will pass on to Lucinda now.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you all for taking the time to join me in this webinar about Ol Malo. I love presenting about Ol Malo because there is so much to it, so much to tell you about, and I will keep it to the 20 minutes, but there is so many different facets to Ol Malo, and it makes it a joy to present and a joy to represent and for you to sell as well. Ol Malo is known as the place of the greater kudu, so that's our sort of physical introduction. But the most important thing about Ol Malo is that it is family owned and family operated. And there are so few places left in Africa that can boast this. And it transforms your guest experiences about the safari lodge that they are staying in, because it makes it so personal and so real that you really do feel that you are joining part of the Francombe family when you go to Ol Malo. So I had better introduce the Francombe family because they really are the essence and so important to Ol Malo and really central to this presentation as well. So to introduce, you've got Colin and Rocky on the right-hand side here. They are third generation Kenyans. Their grandparents came across to Kenya. They brought up and lived here. There's nothing they don't know and hasn't experienced. They've got wonderful, incredible, amazing stories. And it is a privilege to sit and be hosted by them and ask them any questions and hear about their lives. And you can sit for hours and hear everything that they have to say. And those of you who've met them will definitely agree with me on this. On the left-hand side here, we've got Andrew, their son. They've got 3 children that they brought up at Ol Malo. They've been running Ol Malo and bought and created a tourism enterprise called Ol Malo about over 30 years ago, and brought up their son Andrew and 2 other children here. Julia Francombe, who started the Samburu Trust, I'm going to introduce you to later in this presentation. And here also is Andrew's wife Chulu and their son and daughter Chalby and Piper, who are also an important part of the team. So really it is a multi-generational family, and also represents probably fairly well about the kind of people that you're going to send here. It's really good with families, multi-generationals, young, honeymooners. It really does encompass all, and you'll sort of kind of see from later when I'm showing the layout why it works for quite so many different types of people and markets. But they can't do it all on their own. So they have the wonderful Rob and Meg, who many of you will know, and they've been in Africa for many, many, many years. They are the most incredible, wonderful hosts and support the Francombes, all of them. So they all take turns. There's no sort of like, this is someone's particular job. They're massively, hugely into wellness. And so Meg promotes a lot of that side of things. And there's sort of a great family unit. And then we've got Harry Dyer as well on this image on the right hand side. We've got Andrew there standing with Harry, who's joined in at Ol Malo, joining in with the Ol Malo choppers on the helicopter side. But he hosts and everyone mucks in. So you've got an amazing, incredible array of support and people, not just the Francombe family. And that's what makes Ol Malo so incredible and so unique. So where are we? Where is it? Well, it is in northern Kenya, in the Laikipia area and district. And you can see from the map on the right-hand side, it's a bit fuzzy, you probably can't quite see, but it is the last ranch before you get to Samburu and Samburu land. So it is absolutely stunning up there. You'll access either by private charter into Ol Malo airstrip, which is just behind the lodge, or Safari Link flies daily to Loisaba, and it is about an hour's game drive, really beautiful game drive back to the lodge. Also, we can transfer from other lodges by our helicopters, or you can drive from Nairobi. It's about 6 hours. It's a long and bumpy drive, and not one to be taken lightly or recommended, but it is totally possible. So this presentation, what we're going to do is look at the different areas of Ol Malo. So the first and most obvious part is Ol Malo Ranch. This is the more traditional side of it, what you think of as a lodge. We've got two areas here. We've got Ol Malo Lodge, which is the original side, and Ol Malo House, which was built sort of after Ol Malo Lodge, so sometime later, about 10 years ago. So starting with Ol Malo Lodge, and I'll go on with some images, but just so that you can look at this little map, it's kept separate from the house. It's about a 10-minute walk in between. So guests that are staying at the lodge don't mingle with people at the house, unless of course you've got a massive party and you want everyone to be together, as in you're a big booking. But Ol Malo Lodge is much more towards the sort of, because they're individual cottages, you've got a separate swimming pool and everything there, individual cottages, so it's suited much more to sort of couples and honeymooners and couples. But number one room there actually does have a little family annex to it. So if you've got young children, it's great in there too. And then Ol Malo House, you see here, it's actually sort of in 3 little lots. You've got hippo room, the cave lot, hippo room on the right hand side, and the central bit of the house where you've got cave room and Tandala, which is 3 double bedrooms, and then crocodile room, which is like a single cottage as well. So what this suggests to you is that it's really good for multi-generational families. You know, put granny and grandpa into crocodile room, and then the families in the main bit of the house and the hippo rooms. And it is incredibly versatile. So although we've got 6 double rooms, we actually can seat up to about 18 people there, because we've got amazing, beautiful guide rooms as well that we can expand into. So the other great thing about Ol Malo House is that you can actually, we can take 2 families there. You don't have to take it exclusively, although of course you can. We do split it, we can split it into 2 families, and it works really well doing it that way. So Ol Malo Lodge we talked about, that was the one on the left-hand side, which has got the 4 rooms, 4 cottages, as you can see, its own swimming pool here. And we've got 2 guide tents as well if needed, and it's much better, as I said, for honeymooners, couples, and small families. It's a very sort of, traditionally it's been designed and created and made by the Francombe family, and every single room has got these amazing views over the cliff. So it's all Ol Malo set up on a cliff, and these incredible views over Laikipia below. And this picture at the bottom is actually of the little room number 1, where we've got that little family annex. So you can see we can have 2 small children in the bunk bed there. Ol Malo is full of character and twists and turns, and it's great fun to stay in. So not only do you have fun with your hosts and the Francombe family, but the houses have got sort of great sense of humour and design as well. So going on to Ol Malo House, just a little bit about that. As I said, there are 6 rooms, crocodile, hippo, the main bit of the house, and hippo. And we've got 2 guide rooms, so we can expand if you've got a bigger family, and we can take 2 families or exclusive. So it's got its own swimming pool and is self-sufficient. So we tend to keep them separate, but we can mix them up, as I said, if we need to do. So again, you can see that little inset picture there. There's incredible views. Imagine having your morning coffee there, listening to Laikipia wake up in the morning is such a treat. So what you can do on the ranch itself, on Ol Malo, it's all included in the stay. The only thing which is additional is the helicopters. And I'm going to go on and tell you sort of like part 2 really about the helicopters. So we've got, we can have walks. We've got obviously your game drives day and night. The game viewing at Ol Malo is wonderful. It is not in the quantity that you will see in the Mara, and we would never say that. It is one of the many activities that you can do here. We get great elephant sightings, and kudu, and a lot of the plains game, and you know, zebra, and we've got lots of leopard and giraffe. But you also see some of those lovely northern species, so the Gerenuk and the Grevy's zebra and the reticulated giraffe that you wouldn't see in the Mara. So it really complements the Mara well. So you can see lots of animals in the Mara and tick them off, and get your varieties and see your huge herds, and then come up to Ol Malo and see those northern species that you didn't see in the Mara, and then appreciate, living amongst them in a proper Kenyan way rather than as a tourist. You know, in the Mara, you very much get to watch the game, whereas at Ol Malo, you kind of get to roll in Kenya and really get involved like if you actually lived there and not as a tourist, and that's what makes it so special. So what else you can do some camel riding, horse riding as well, and they've got lots of different levels of horses. So if you're very novice, that's absolutely fine, and you can go for a nice quiet ride on the plains which are behind Ol Malo, or we also got horses for more experienced riders as well. Those of you keen to run off some of the amazing safari food, there's running and cycling, and also they're very inventive about what they can do for kids. So a bit of fishing, milking, not just cows. They could go and milk a camel if they would like, scavenger hunts, anything that would keep children you know, excited and involved, because very often what children need is not to sit for hours in a game drive vehicle. And then the Samburu cultural experiences are phenomenal. And I will go on to discuss the Samburu and the relationship with the Samburu, because it is such an important part of Ol Malo. But I will explain how it works with the Samburu. But the Samburu aren't paid for you to go to the Manyatas. It's not a tourism kind of feeling there. It is much more, it's a relationship between the Samburu and Ol Malo. And because they help one another, it's a really nice, happy, strong relationship and feeling between them. But I'm going to go into that in more detail because it is really key to what you learn and understand and know about Ol Malo. So here are just some of the images just to sort of like illustrate what I was saying. I love this top left one of Andrew. That's quite a different sundowner. We do the sundowners with the white tablecloth and the gin and tonic with the ice and the slice, but we also, for those people that we feel would really enjoy it, and particularly, you know, here it's the kids, build a campfire and sit around with a tusker and tell stories and things like that, because actually that's the real Kenya, and that's what people really enjoy doing as well. And then lovely picture of actually Piper, I think here, Piper Francombe learning how to milk a camel, and then at the bottom how you can ride the horses and watch the elephants, or using your own 2 feet and walk with them. And then top right here, we've got the lovely Hussein, who is one of our main Samburu guides who have been here with us for many years. And you're learning from a Samburu in a different way that you would learn from maybe Andrew or Colin, and they teach you about the trees that they use for medicine, and so you see the wildlife through a Samburu eye, which is always very different and very refreshing. And then of course at the bottom, as I've said, you've got your traditional game viewing day and night. Dogs optional to join your game drive, and it is a great way always to get up close and personal to the game, of course. So what else can be done at Ol Malo? One of the really popular things is being out, sleeping out on the ranch at Ol Malo, and this is all included within the price as well. So we've got, for example, we've got the leopard hide, which we've got 4 bunks. We can actually squeeze in another 2 camp beds, but it's got 4 beds in there, and we can put a grill up as well if you've got younger children. But that's great to see the leopard and watch the leopard hide by the watering hole there. On the right here, we've got our tree house, which is really romantic and really popular with the honeymooners. And there's a lovely big double bed up there, and they can spend the night out there, knowing that they're just a radio call from somebody if they need some assistance. But that's a popular way. And then also fly camping with little pop-up tents. And as it says here, depending on Nomad, but I'll explain what Nomad is in a second. That's another side of Ol Malo, which is very exciting. So all of this could be done in the ranch, so people can feel that they're sort of like fly camping and doing something different without leaving the sort of comfort of the ranch. I never said actually, it reminds me that actually the ranch is 5,000 acres in size, so there's plenty of room to go and explore and go and do some of these activities around. So, and then really, this next section is about Ol Malo Nomad and Ol Malo helicopters, or Ol Malo choppers, and it is an opportunity to explore northern Kenya above the boundaries and beyond the boundaries of Ol Malo, and this is where it gets really expensive. Really expensive, sorry, really exciting. Not where it gets really expensive. But there is the additional expense of the cost of the helicopter, of course, when you're actually hiring the helicopters out. So that is the additional expense, but it is so worth it. They've got 2 helicopters, they're called Robinson 44s or R44s. The guests either $900 net if they do it through you, or $1,000 rack per flying hour. if you kind of compare some of this to what it costs for a balloon flight, it's sort of similar for that. And it really is such an amazing opportunity to fly with Harry or Andrew and get one, sort of like you have your headphones on and you get, they're sort of telling you exactly what's going on. It is incredible experience to do. So we can do 2 to 3 people in the helicopter, depending on how far the flight is. The further the flight, we just prefer to just have 2 in there. And as I said, we've got 2 helicopters. The flight options, some of the things that you can do, they can just go very quickly, just for an hour, and go and have some sundowners. I've got an amazing photograph to show you in a minute about doing that. I've done that from Ol Malo. You sweep up the river and then go onto a sort of a rocky pinnacle, which is amazing to do. Or you can go further afield, go up to Turkana for a day, 5 or 6 hours. And that's just not 5 or 6 hours flying in a helicopter the whole time. You stop and you go down, you see the flamingo lakes and explore different areas on the way. And it is, I haven't done this trip, but I know all about it, and it looks amazing, and it is definitely on my bucket list. Or you can do overnights with Nomad, which means that we might fly you out somewhere and then you can spend the night there. And so we can go even further and go into some areas and terrain that you might never have been or dream of getting to, and certainly wouldn't be able to if you weren't on a helicopter. We can use it for transfers, either to go up to from other lodges or to go up to other Nomad experiences, which I'm going to tell you about now. So this is Ol Malo Nomad. So Nomad is all about walking or camels or using the helicopter, and it is about exploring northern Kenya. So we've got 2 options. The camel mobile camp, which we will mobilize for a minimum of 2 people for 2 nights. The rate is the same as staying at Ol Malo, but there is a one-off mobilization fee of $8,000. So that is how that works. You can either go on horses with a maximum of 6 people, or you can walk, and that's a maximum of 8 people, or we can do a combination of the 2. Now, I can either send you some sample itineraries, but really what happens on this is it's all entirely tailored to your guests. So you could come to us and say, I've got 6 people and they want to walk and they would like to go and go for 3 days. What can you come up with? And this is their budget. And then we can sort of like create where they go, how long they go for, and it's a brilliant way of doing it. So we also involve the chopper, which either can be for transfers, so maybe they want to go even further afield, so we can fly people up and they can walk back, or it could just be about the choppers and they don't go with the camels or the horses, and they can literally do it from the helicopters. So this is a great image which shows husband and wife Andrew and Chulu comparing their horsepower, but it is great fun and very fun to get involved with. And here's some of the things that when you're up on Nomad, some of the experiences that you can enjoy. Andrew's caught rather a large fish there. On the right hand side, that was the sundowner I was talking to you about, where you can fly up and have a sundowner and then fly back to Ol Malo, which is so worth it. Bottom left, we've got the camels. So when you're doing a Nomad and you are doing the camping, you walk in, they're walk-in tents, and you've got proper camp beds to walk in tents and camp beds to sleep in, and then we cook for our guests, and they've got all the gin and tonics and all the creature comforts and the traditional bucket shower, everything like in days gone old in the way that mobile camping used to work. So minimum of 2 days and for 2 people, and it is such a worthwhile thing to do, and especially for those people who maybe feel that they have done all of the traditional safaris, and they want to do something completely different and have an experience that they thought that they would never be able to have, and it works. Whereas when you come to Ol Malo, there's nothing set in stone before you come. There are so many different ways you can experience Ol Malo. There's a wonderful river there. You can go down the river in inner tubes, and you can go fishing. It depends what you like, and there is no set itinerary. You don't do what other people do or is convenient. You do exactly what suits you, and that's what makes it so unique here. And then finally, going on to a really important part is the community and conservation work that Ol Malo does with the Samburu Trust. And to understand this, you've got to understand the relationship with Ol Malo, you have to understand where the Samburu Trust comes from, because they are integral to the way and the relationship between the two. So the Samburu Trust has been going for 20 years now. It was set up by the Francombe's daughter Julia during a time of a great drought, and she saw the Samburu really suffering, and she wanted to do anything she could to help them. And as the Samburu Trust has developed over the last 20 years, there are 4 key areas that they work in health, in wildlife, education and the land. And the Trust runs it separately from Ol Malo, but Ol Malo supports it in a lot of things, like in the way that it hosts it is sort of like hosts how the Samburu Trust can work and can function. For example, if we look at the first point being health, the first one you come across is they've managed to eradicate trachoma, a blindness disease. Julia brought surgeons across from the UK and US, and they did bush surgery on so many Samburu, and they have been it's been such a success. Burns, for example, because Samburu obviously cook, and in their house they have open fires, and there very sadly are quite a few burns inflicted through accidents, and the Samburu know that they can bring their children or any burns to Ol Malo, and they've got a room in Ol Malo where they can deal with the burns and make sure that they're cleaned properly, and obviously if they're really serious then they get transferred down to Nanyuki. So that's sort of one of the ways that they can help, and that's one of the ways that Ol Malo supports the Samburu Trust. Education, we've got a lot of schools around Ol Malo that have been built around the area, but it's taught with the traditional Samburu values, so things like sibling rotation, so that you're not just taking one child and educating one child in the family, but making sure that you've got the kind of syllabus that children understand they can dip in and dip out of, so that the children can still go and tend the sheep and the cows and still keep their roots firmly in Samburu, and yet at the same time becoming more equipped and learning as they need to do for today's world. They assist in the training of the teachers, and you can go and see the schools that have been built, and they are absolutely beautiful to go and look at. That original photograph, the two American children with the Samburu, they sort of was helping in the school, and it was fascinating for them to see and take the information back to their school in New York. Also with the wildlife side, the Samburu are the guardians of the land. The Moran are particularly, the young warriors are particularly helpful. They're the ones that are out in open Samburu land, and they're the ones that first see any problems with poaching, or if a wildlife and maybe an elephant's got in distress, and they're the ones, and they feed back to Ol Malo and to the Samburu Trust, who can then in a position to then go and help the wildlife. So that relationship is really important, and the Samburu really understand the importance of the wildlife to their way of life. And then the land, it is creating with the consultation of the Samburu about where they would like small water reservoirs or dams so that they can feed their cattle, but at the same time the elephant can also feed, and it takes away all the conflict that can sometimes be created if it's not thought through carefully. So it's really well thought through, and it is very close to Ol Malo, and this sentence at the end, which it sums it up, the relationship between Ol Malo and the Samburu Trust has created a strong culture of respect, connecting people and their projects, benefiting both the Samburu people and their wildlife, and in turn it then benefits our guests to Ol Malo because they get to experience all of this as well. And then finally, this just, you can see Julia here, who's so in Francombe, who's an integral part of all of this. We've got a wonderful beading workshop at Ol Malo, and the Samburu ladies come in and make their beads and their wares here, and empowers them. And it is the most wonderful hour to just sit with them, hear them chatting, even though you don't understand what they're saying, and they welcome the guests to sit with them. And it's such a lovely environment of women only, and it is beautiful. It's really beautiful to see that Samburu women only, not the guests. It can be men and women going in, but it's really humbling and lovely to see. And then just a lovely little bit that shows the character of Ol Malo as well. They constantly rescuing various different animals, and you never quite know when you're up there about what animal you're going to see next that they've rescued. This is when I've been there, I've seen oryx and a zebra called Bottom, and this is an eland that I met when we were up there. Unfortunately, I've forgotten her name, but they are great. When you wander and get up for breakfast, you never quite know if you're going to be accompanied by a squirrel or not, and who's going to be nibbling on the lawn. And it's lovely for the children because they can get up close and personal. And sometimes they stay around Ol Malo, and sometimes they wander off when they've grown up and join the herd again. And it's just lovely. It just shows the character of Ol Malo. So that concludes my presentation. I am ready for some questions when you that you might have for me. My email address is there, and I know that Sarah's going to follow up. One of the things I did want to say was there is an incredible video which Sarah is going to put in the link to the follow-up email, and I will also follow up with you. But there's a link to a 3-minute video which is the essence of Ol Malo, and I bet it is one of the best videos that you will have seen associated with the property. So please do take the time, the 3 minutes, to have a look at it, because it will back up everything I've said. But I'm based in the UK, and that's my email address. Reservations are through Bush and Beyond. I can send rack rates, but Bush and Beyond can send net rates. So you can contact them. They're based obviously in Nairobi. I'm sure all of you know them. So I look forward to my questions.
Thank you, Lucinda. It was a wonderful presentation with really fascinating views. So far, we haven't received any questions yet. We received a request for a recorded presentation. So please note that everyone who registered will receive the entire presentation recorded by email. But you can also access all past webinars on the ATA website under Services, Webinars, and Past Presentation. Hold on, we just got 2 questions which came in now. So from Justin Huckster, what is the recommended number of nights for Ol Malo?
I think you wouldn't want to do less than 3 nights. There is so much to do and so much variety there. I think you would want to do 4 nights, but 3 nights would be fine. So I'm actually going and taking my family up in February, and we're going to do 3 nights up there because we've got a lot of Kenya to go and see. But you know, it gives you 2 full days, and I think that if you think you've got wildlife viewing, you've got the cultural side, you want a bit of adventure. We always usually take guests if they down to the river by camel or by walking and spend a day having a picnic down by the river. So I would say a minimum of 3 nights, but 4 nights is probably ideal.
Okay, thank you for that. We have another question from Ginny Carter. Regarding the costs, was the Nomad experience $1,000 per person or per group?
Okay, so the rates for Ol Malo is around about $1,000 a night, a little bit less during regular season and a tiny bit more for premium season. But let's sort of stick around the $1,000 a night mark, and then Nomad is exactly the same rate, but there is a plus person $1,000 mobilization fee of $1,000 on top of that, if you see what I mean. So it's per person, one-off mobilization fee, and then a nightly rate.
And regarding the helicopter, was it $900 net per person or per flying hour per group?
Per flying hour per group, $900 net. So it's a lot cheaper than something like a Eurocopter or a big one. So the R44 is much more compact, and so we can keep the price down for the flying hours. So it does make it much more affordable than the big helicopters that that some operators use, and it's really good for also for those shorter hops when you want to do sundowners, and it makes it more accessible for everybody. The only thing I also would say about the helicopter is, if you think that your clients will be interested, please do put it to them, and do, because what happens is people go to Ol Malo, and because you sort of sit around and chat with Colin and Rocky and everyone, and then everyone says, oh yes, you know, I went up on a helicopter, and then everyone wants to go up on the helicopter, and you know, there's only Andrew and Harry, there are 2 helicopters, so it is a good idea to book in advance, but they are based up at Ol Malo, so it's usually, you know, people do usually want to go even for a short hop at one point during their stay at Ol Malo.
Wonderful, thank you. We have another question from Justin Huckster regarding whether there is a minimum age for kids.
No minimum age at all. Children of any age are welcome, and we will tailor it 100% towards your family and the way that it would suit them the best.
Okay, then we have another question from Caroline Bloomer. Who hosts at each property, and do they dine with the guests or play it by ear?
They certainly always dine with the guests. That is part of Ol Malo's charm and its USP. It is very hosted. Very, you know, that is part of it. Is that you the spending time with the Francombes and with Meg and Rob is the key part of why you're there. Funnily enough, I was just talking to Chulu about this yesterday because I haven't been up for a year or so, and I'm not going up till February now. And she said that the way that they're doing is it really depends on who the guests, because very often, because Rob and Meg are very well known as well in the industry, people will actually request, oh, can I spend a bit more time with them? So it is very fluid, but everybody probably, you know, will get hosted. But Meg and Rob are slightly more spend slightly more time at the house as a rule, but it is very fluid and very flexible.
Wonderful, thank you. We have another question from Krupita Shah. She's asking, what's the client profile you would recommend?
Very, very, very wide in age group and demographics. So I would say, you know, certainly from the young children, really good for young families, excellent for that. Your honeymooners, I've said my brother went there on honeymoon. My parents and my elderly aunt has been there, I think 8 times now. She just loves to go and spend time with Rocky and Colin and relaxing by the swimming pool and toddling off on the odd game drive. That's what makes her happy. But I think it's really good for people who like adventure, but they don't have to be hardcore adventurers. For people that don't necessarily just want to sit in a game viewing vehicle, that want something more, you know, I would say that anyone can sit at a dinner party and say, oh, you know, I saw a lion kill, and, you know, and then everyone comes out with their stories about being in, you know, whatever game park, whether it be in Kenya or South Africa or Tanzania in Serengeti. But actually the stories you come back with from Ol Malo will be so unique and so much more fun and more heartfelt, and really gets to the real Kenya so much more than feeling like a tourist of the others. So people who want to go a little bit beyond the ordinary, I'd say, to go to Ol Malo.
Wonderful, thank you for that. We got a few questions more in, so I will go through them. So there is another question from Sarah Jeffries asking, do you have to retain your room at Ol Malo whilst you're out with nomads?
It depends. No, so you don't retain your room. If you're out fly camping just around the ranch, then you will. But if you're going out for nomad, what a lot of people do is they might arrive on the first night and spend a evening at Ol Malo Lodge itself, and then might go out to do 2 or 3 days doing nomad, and then they will come back. So no, we don't keep the room for that time.
Thank you for that. Another question from Rosemary Oder asking, what is the best period to visit Ol Malo?
So Ol Malo, I think any time. We are actually closed. We closed for the months of April and May because of the long rains, and November for the short rains. So that takes out the sort of the negative time because it's during the rains. Although Julie always says it's rather wonderful or sad because the guests go, it rains and it goes all green and lush and gorgeous just when they, you know, when the guests when they've closed. So I don't think there is a good or bad time. I get very frustrated because everyone wants to go to Kenya, or a lot of people, you'll guess, want to go to Kenya during July and August, which has now become the high season. But actually, the best time for weather and the best time, I think, to go up to Laikipia and into all of Kenya is that sort of January, February, March. So for me, I would point you more towards that way because A, the rates are better. We've got a stay 4, pay 3, get that the right way around, during our regular season. And that is from 7th of January to the 31st of March. So it's better value. There's less people. So for me, that would be the time I would suggest that you go, because you're just battling with availability for July and August, and the prices are always greater throughout all of Kenya. So I would say January to March.
Great, thank you for the tip. So last 2 questions. What are other locations to best combine with Ol Malo? Can you combine it with Tsavo?
Savo. Yes, you can. I think you'd be better to talk to your DMC about combining them. But I think with Ol Malo, what you want to do is combine it. I mean, some people combine it with other Laikipia properties, and so they just want to stay in Laikipia. And those probably were the people that have done a lot of the game viewing and the bigger game reserves. If they're first timers and they haven't done a lot of safari, I think that you're really good to combine it with a Savo or a Masai Mara, because then you get the quantity of game and the variety of game, and then you go to Ol Malo for that detail and see those other sort of like other species that you're not going to see in those areas. So if it's first timers, combine it with a more game heavy environment where they're just going to sit in a game viewing vehicle and purely watch game. And if they maybe have done a lot of that in the past, then you can combine it with some of those Samburu lodges further north and do it that way, and then keep it in one area, and you've got less transfers.
Great, thank you. So our last question is from Aurélie. Lucinda, if you could please go again through the activities which are included, please.
Yes, I'll go back to that slide quickly. So we've got walking, game drives, night drives and day drives, riding the camels. We've got horse riding at lots of different levels, so you can be a novice or you can be more experienced, running, cycling. And then there's lots of ranch activities for the kids, and also the Samburu cultural experiences and visits and do those. They've got weekly markets that you can go to, visit a Manyata, and seeing the nomad schools that they have created through the Samburu Trust. Also, what I didn't mention is that we've got this wonderful river where we've got inner tubes, and they blow up the inner tubes and you can race the rapids down, which I did when I was 5 months pregnant, and it was such fun to do it. And then they've got this on the side of the river, they've got all this mud, and they convince you that it's really healing to put this mud on you. It's going to make you look 10 years younger, so you find yourself wandering around with a mud pack on, and it's just so much fun. And then you have a picnic down there, and it's just the real way that you can live in Kenya and a real life. This is how the Francombes live on a daily basis, and you go and live like a Kenyan for your 3 or 4 nights. And I tell you, it is what will stick in your memory for all of your life. You might forget you've seen a lion kill in different areas, but you will always remember those days that you spent at Ol Malo.
Right. Thank you very much, Lucinda, for the great presentation. For anyone who has joined through halfway, I repeat, you will receive by email the recorded presentation. If some questions come through afterwards, I will forward them to Lucinda. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. And thanks again, Lucinda.
Thanks very much. Thanks for joining me. Bye.
Bye.